What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P, Shannon White here for another episode of the Steelers Global Perspective.
Well, we have suffered. I mean, as a Steelers fan, I've never felt like I suffered like we have in the last few years of an incompetent offense. I mean, I don't know any other word to use. I mean,
anemic?
You'd hear the national media talk about, they're playing the Cardinals. You know, the Cardinals are mailing it in. This team's done for the year. They're competing for the first pick of the draft, and they come into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers. I mean, it was like, and it looked like they were the team that were still in playoff contention, and the Steelers were striving for the number one pick in the draft. And it was just disheartening. It was hard to write.
Wasn't the Patriots
because of how incompetent they were?
But didn't the Patriots come into the Steelers game
having
15 points in the prior two games or three games? I think it was three games.
They scored 30-some, I think.
It was, and then but I mean, going into the game, they'd only scored like 15 points or something in 3 games, and it's like
they'd been shut out the week before.
Yeah, and I'm like, so you're averaging 5, and then they won a game 9-6 or something, and then they lost a game like something to 6. So I remember just thinking they're averaging 5 points a game, which I remember. I think it was 15 points because I remember thinking the average is odd. Like you can't really get there in the NFL. I remember thinking it wasn't that funny. That's why the stat stuck in my brain. But then you watch the Steelers and the Patriots came in at home on a Thursday night. And yes, we're underdone at linebacker because we had Blake Martinez starting in that game or Martinez starting in that game and all that sort of stuff. But like Ezekiel Elliott ran wild to the point he's now back being the running back with the Dallas Cowboys, right? Like, so, you know, and they let Pollard go. So I just want to see this line. And the thing is, imagine this defense. Like there's Steve Tanner wrote a good comment in the chat about the Steelers going to have a problem at quarterback with how much money they're investing on the defense. And it's a difficult thing in this league to invest so much in defense, not offense, because even as Patrick Mahomes has showed, like you've got to be able to score points. And I've said for the last however long I've been here in podcast, you are not going to make it to the AFC Championship game if you can't score 30-plus points, you know, when you need to. And
at least occasionally.
That's what I mean. When you
at least occasionally.
And so my thing about this offense is that the Steelers can continue to try and do the pay the defense more. We'll have this awesome defense, and that's a Mike Tomlin thing as well. It's a Pittsburgh thing. But the idea of this defense being able to feast because they're fresh, right? Because the offense actually isn't averaging 2-minute and 17-second drives. They're averaging 3-minute drives, which would almost be NFL leading, right? But that would be, I don't think a lot of people are sitting there at the moment understanding the consequences of the good offense is not just scoring points and not just consistency. It's not just that we get to watch good football. It's the defense is going to be better for every second that the extra that offense can be on the field. And that's what I'm like about the Arthur Smith offense, regardless of what it will be or will not be on the field, is that because of the way it gets people involved, because of the way it uses running backs, because of the way it uses plays, and the way that he tries to get that offense consistently going down the field. I like the way that's set up to help the defense. Where there's times with Canada where I'm like, you're just doing a play for play's sake, and that's not what you want to do. And that's why we saw stupid things like, I'm going to pass it 2 yards on 3rd down. Mate, the line's 8 yards, 9 yards away, and you're throwing it 2 yards, and you expect one bloke to miss 4 people. It ain't college football. It's not going to happen. You're not throwing it into an empty space. You're throwing it to a bloke that's going to have every man coming for him to knock his head off, and you're giving him a standing start. Like, it's ludicrous. Like, it's just nuts.
The modern NFL is so different. You can never have another Steel Curtain or another Steel Curtain dynasty because you couldn't afford to have that many superstars.
No.
Now, you look at the Steelers defense, who's the highest paid defense or top 2 in the NFL. You've got the best defensive player in the world in TJ Watt. So he's going to get paid like it. You got Cam Hayward, who's an older elite defensive lineman, maybe no longer, but he's getting paid up near that. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's the best ball hawking free safety. He's getting paid like that. If 3 guys, you have a ton of your cap, and you're already paying the defense substantially more than you're paying the offense.
I mean, even Alex Highsmith, though, like he's a top 15 pass rusher.
Highsmith, I mean, Ogunjobi's one of the top paid guys.
That annoys me. That annoys me.
That drives me crazy. But
yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you're going to overpay on defense, they got to be a shutdown unit. And what I mean is, people keep saying, well, the offense put the defense in terrible positions in the playoffs. The offense in the 70s did the same thing. Bradshaw was the turnover machine. But he also made big plays, but it was one or the other. But if he turned it over even at their own goal line, the defense would come in, and I don't know how many times they stopped him, kept him out of the end zone, only give up a field goal.
Yep.
Or got the ball back. I mean, there's no reason the defense can't still be aggressive.
And this defense as well.
Even if your offense puts you in a bad situation. But this defense, when it's a regular kickoff, they get the ball, and in a normal situation, the Steelers defense is very effective. When there's a quick turnover, for whatever reason, it's like they call the game different. They're not prepared to go back out there yet, and they almost always give up points.
Yeah.
There's a momentum shift.
Yeah.
When there's turnovers, especially with this defense. If you're the highest paid unit on the team, you got to be better than that. And in these games you just talked about, the Patriots, the Cardinals, against bad offenses and bad teams, the Steelers, everybody said the Steelers defense going to feast this week. They might get 8 sacks, and they end up with 1 or 2. I mean, it's like, do they rise to the level of the competition? Sometimes they do. And sometimes they go down.
Yes.
And they play down to the level of competition.
Yeah. And that's a criticism on Tomlin.
And that's why you can't overpay Cam Hayward.
Yes. I completely. It's funny. I'm going to throw out a scenario. I think I know. I mean, I'm never going to know for sure, but I feel like the problem with what you talk about could be is the lack of a quality inside linebacker. And the reason why I say that is when you've got to react really fast as a defense, and obviously defenses go in and like after the first drive that they've after the first drive that the other opposition offenses had, they'll sit there and they all get their Surface tablets out, another plug for Surface tablets, and they go, what are we doing and what are we seeing in the matchup, and all this is what they're doing today, blah blah, and they obviously react to what they're seeing. But if you're getting back on the field quickly without that time to sort of reset and recalibrate, apart from maybe just being gassed because you're like feeling like, oh my gosh, I just like need some air after that. Like if you don't have the quality middle linebacker, it's required Fitzpatrick to go in there and talk to that. And you've seen it on the sidelines where he's having to talk to the defense and get them set. And so last year you had the conundrum where not only did you have problems in inside linebacker where you were calling on, practice squad level depth chart or guys that were retired doing, owning a hockey team and amateur hockey team and, learning a plumbing trade, which is great. Everyone should be doing more trades. But, you had the situation where Minkah Fitzpatrick was out for so long as well, or not for so long, but he was out a number of games. And then also he's playing with a broken hand in other games. So, and if people can say, oh, the middle linebackers or the inside linebackers are a completely different thing to Minkah Fitzpatrick. Well, no, they're not, because Minkah Fitzpatrick's been playing effectively times linebacker for a long time now, the last couple of years straight. So he's not been playing free safety. So I wonder whether when you put some of these things together, the idea of bringing in, and I know Patrick Queen is more of, the guy that goes down and stops the run, but like you bring in him, you get Cole Holcomb back properly. You bring in Peyton Wilson, who's very switched on up here. You've got a Landon Roberts. Suddenly, we've talked a lot about linebacker this season, but when you talk about the continuity of the defense and the effectiveness of the defense, I can't understate how happy I am with the linebacking core.
Well, last year, until the injury to Holcomb and Alexander, we've seen the best inside linebacker, depth chart that the Steelers have had in a long time. Ever since Ryan Shazir's injury, there's been a hole in the middle. We all know it.
Yeah.
Last year, they played a stretch of defense that we haven't seen for a while. And they were really coming on. And Holcomb was having his best couple of game stretch with the Steelers. And then, of course, the injury. And then the next week, Alexander is Achilles. So I think there's a lot of accuracy in what you're saying. Because that is usually your leader, the guy who calls the plays, calls the adjustments, gets people on the same page. If you remember, how many times did we see Ryan Clark, Troy Polamalu, the cornerbacks like Taylor and them in a huddle on the sidelines? They would pray together when the offense was out on the field, and they would look at their, and get on the same page. Then they pray together, and they were ready to go back out there. You don't want your safety in there talking to the linebackers and the defense linemen say, "This is what we got to do." If you have a quality inside linebacker and depth there, that's who's going to be organizing, because they're in the middle of the field. They can communicate to the secondary, and they can communicate to the offensive line. The defensive line, excuse me.
And I don't think it could be understated that if let's assume my theory is correct, then Minka is not spending that time with the secondary, right?
He's not. You don't see that anymore. Yeah.
Which means, and I know he did lose a step or two, but Levi Wallace had an okay season in 2022 before 2023. I did a show on it, is he an unsung hero? Because he had actually played pretty decently in 2022. But he played quite well at the Bills, right? And you could say he hadn't lost his step yet. But at the Bills, he had Micah Hyde, he had Poyer, he had Tre'Davious White sitting there. So the job for him wasn't as the job for him there was a lot more, you do this role, this responsibility, you play this position, boom. What we expected from him in Pittsburgh was more than what he did at the Bills. If he'd been asked to do what he did at the Bills, it would have been as the third guy, sometimes the second guy. That would have been different. But last year he had, Pat P coming in. I was going to mix up Porter with Pat P. Pat P coming in, who has lost some steps and is older. And you've got Porter on it for, you can't fault the bloke, but he's on his rookie year, and the Steelers had a very one set thing they were trying to do with him. So the impact of Minka having to be the linebacker leader, not just the defensive leader, because also like Cam Hayward missed a lot of time, but also Cam Hayward doesn't lead the middle linebackers and the secondary. Hayward's job is completely different. I'm talking about a different type of leadership. But the idea that Minka not spend time with the secondary, well, then the secondary's got an issue, and then we already know that the strong safety was a gap. So that whole thing goes to the Steelers sacrificed so much with what they did with Minka last year. And I know we took the show last week on the Minka aspect. People came at me in the comments, oh, well, they had to do something. And, you put the best player in the position of most need. I'm like, no, Minka is the best, as you said, ball hawking, or to me, he's the best free safety in the league. Mm-hmm. You play the guy there. And, we can't go and right the wrongs of prior past, but we can right them a little bit by putting him back in that position. And that's what I think they've done with the linebacking core. I'll give you another tidbit. So Peyton Wilson at linebacker, he got an interception on 3rd and log in my little first kickoff game.
Oh, okay.
So I thought you'd like that one.
Oh, yeah. And I think he's going to do it for real, too. I think they already say he's got superpowers. There was a little thing that they talked about today, because he really does. He's very unique with that speed and that size combo. And I think he's going to be special. I really do. But I wanted to point out one thing. All the money they're paying TJ Watt, who's the best defensive player in the league, and the Steelers' best player. And you can count on him.
Yeah.
But last year, when they made their playoff push at the end of the year, the defense stepped up too. You know who led that? It was Landon Roberts. He held it all together.
Yeah.
He did, with the practice squad guys, the guys off the street, the retired or the
Miles Jack gave him a lot of credit too.
Landon Roberts is who led that.
That's a very, very, very good point. That's what I say. I think the Steelers could have. They've got Queen at number 1. You rotate between. I think Holcomb right now. It'll take Peyton. It'll take Peyton Wilson a year. Holcomb fit. He's can be one of the best number 2 linebackers in the league. But to have a third option in there, to have 2 third options in there, one the Buck, one the Mac, that can literally go in whenever you need them and have second or even potentially number 1 level talent in Peyton Wilson. That is huge. And that's why people say to me, they might cut Holcomb. Why the F would you cut Holcomb after what you had last year? You ain't cutting that, man. You're keeping 4 starting caliber guys and you're riding through the season because best case scenario, none of them get injured. You can rotate those blokes. You can there's no reason why they can't find schematics where Queen, Wilson, and Landon Roberts are on the field at the same time. Or Holcomb, Wilson, and Queen are on the same field at the same time, especially with how fast, as you've said previously, Wilson is. What you can do in sub-package, that's a whole different thing.
Well, Landon Roberts had his best season of his career at coverage last year. I mean, he had long been a weakness, I thought. He wasn't a weakness last year. And then Peyton Wilson, they're talking about him being the starting dime linebacker.
Well, that would make actually. Do you know what?
It makes too much sense.
Why wouldn't you, as a way to bring him into the defense? That actually probably makes the most sense.
Don't put too much on him. Yeah.
Don't put too much on him. He's going to be bigger than most of the guys that he's playing against, or he's going to be the same. It's the same guys he'll be marking up against anyway, from a tight end perspective. He's going to be faster than the majority of guys that get schemed against him there. You've got behind him to have Deshaun Elliott and Minka. That's bring the boom. What's funny? We talk about Russell Wilson going back to the heydays of the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I mean, Legion of Boom, there's no reason why these guys can't be a lower, a Legion of Boom light. Fitzpatrick can put a hit on. Deshaun Elliott can put a hit on. There's no reason why these can't do it again.
Let's just dream a little. I like to dream sometimes. You have Joey Porter Jr.
We'll call this story time with Shannon.
Yeah, we're going to just dream a little, folks. We'll have Joey Porter Jr. Corey Trice pans out and is your CB2, another avatar. Darius Rush, lives up to all that athleticism to where he's a quality number 3 who can come in and start if need be. You probably won't be able to keep him too long because people are going to want him. But then you have a rookie, Brian Watts, who's a freak athlete in his own right, who can give you snaps out of the slot depending on matchups, but who could be maybe a star in the making at safety down the line. Who can match that size? We're talking about a Legion of Boom. I mean, who can match that size, that athleticism, that tenacity? I haven't seen it. Not four guys. I
want to throw in there little good old Beanie Bishop because.
Well, you know what I think of Bishop, yeah.
And Bishop plays like a Legion of Boom guy. He's not afraid to.
No, he plays bigger than he is, definitely.
That's what I mean. So I don't want to leave out the little guy. I want to give a little.
Well, you need those smaller slot guys.
That's right.
Basically, who can blitz, got great speed, and wants to knock you out. You can't beat that.
Yeah, it's just Legion of Boom with a bit of Mike Hilton 2.0 sprinkled on top. Exactly. And Beanie's a lot quicker than Hilton was. Definitely.
Oh, Beanie's way faster.
Way faster.
Yeah.
I think people are underselling that. Man, I love that. I love that.
I'd love to see it happen, guys. I would.
I don't know. You're really high on Rush. If Rush could turn out to be that would be that'd be great.
When you hear Joey Porter Jr. talking about they've got like a kinship, and he always mentions Trice, but he also mentions Rush.
Yeah,
and these guys being that close, they hang out together, they do things together, and I think they recognizes game.
Yeah,
and he's like, these guys are as big as me, they're as fast as me, and it's going to come down. Can the coaches unlock Rush's potential?
Yeah, I think we'll close it out with this. I think, I talked about Mingo, we talked about Pickens, and we talked about Trice, and we talked about Rush just then. We talked about Ryan Watts, and we talked about Porter. We're getting big-bodied wide receivers, and then even if not Mingo's there, it's big-bodied wide receivers matching up against big cornerbacks. Yeah. They are learning, and Pickens, as we all know, is one of the best combat catchers in the league, right? Yep. So these, and we saw the battles between Porter and Pickens last year. There was a little bit of Trice just before he got injured. I think it was the day before he got injured. There was a little bit of Pickens Trice battle going on, but I think we talked about it 2-3 weeks ago. We talked about the idea of the offense. Maybe it was when I spoke with Mark, but I know it was on the channel. We were talking about the idea that the offense has to go up against the best defense in the league, and we were talking about, you and I were talking about, and how much better it makes
the games easier.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think that out wide as well. If you want to learn, if you want to play press man coverage, and you've got those types of cornerbacks, and you get to mark up against George Pickens in training. I don't know at the moment in the league out there in terms of combat catchers who are out there, and the speed at which he can do it, and the physicality at which he tries to have that release and get past that cornerback. I mean, obviously, we were worried him coming out of college, he was just going to, when the play started, just shove the cornerback on the ground, right? In terms of physicality, there's not that many wide receivers out there. There's certainly better wide receivers than George Pickens right now out there, in terms of the fact that they've proven themselves. George Pickens has to be one of the most physical, cranky. We talk about they and Good Morning Football do the angry runs, and we talk about the angry runs with Warren and Najee. Pickens is an angry runner. When he's got the ball, it's like he's not a happy, and it's not happy chappy. He wants to get to that line. So I love the idea about these young physical cornerbacks up against George Pickens. That's what they get to rock up and play with each day, and every rep that they can get over Pickens means a lot for how I feel they can show up in the NFL.
If you're training for a championship fight, you want to go up against the best. You can, the most competitive guys. That's how you become better. And they ain't out there pillow fighting. I mean, you're going up against George Pickens. You're in a battle all day, and that makes him better to try to get open against Joey Porter Jr. or Trice or Rush, and it's going to make them better trying to cover another freak athlete, because that's what Pickens is. As you say, it only is going to help both the offense and the defense and all these players.
That's it. Well, that's going to wrap up this week's Steelers Global Perspective. We've talked, I don't think there's anything we haven't covered. Offense, defenses, coaches, rookies, veterans, contracts, the works, all here on the Steelers Global Perspective. That's what the idea of the show is, to give you an international perspective and a macro perspective on all things Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm Matty P with Shannon White. Have a great weekend, depending on when you listen to the segments of this show. But yeah, as always, go Steelers.